I've been approached any number of times to do exhibitions and shows and talks about the Ave and the scene, and it was so dynamic. And of course, the interesting thing is that probably a full half of all of our modern intellectual, social, personal ideas came out of what we developed in the 60s and 70s, but nobody knows it. And so they see the superficials, and we realize that we did a show. They would see, oh, tie-dye and beautiful posters, and that's what it was like. No, it all came out of the head in here. And those things were really manifestations of people trying to express how they were feeling intellectually, morally, socially, and it made sense to us, and it forwarded what we were doing. Now it's like taking a desiccated body out of the desert and say, please sing and dance. Well, you can't, because you've taken all the life out of it. And for us, it was the life that we were pursuing, the ways in which we could amend and change our life and the society around us so that we felt it was more human and humane and responsible and all those things. And so there was a lot of gathering together. We discovered before, you hoped and prayed that the people with power would do something. You might write them a letter. You could go talk to your congressman and say, oh, thank you, Mr. Jones. I'm sure we'll remember everything you said for 5 seconds. And so we realized that we got together and did it ourselves, we could actually move things, and we experimented, and it worked. We were experienced. It all started back in the 50s with the Supreme Court and the steps of Little Rock, Arkansas High School. And it galvanized students like I had never seen in my life. If you hadn't been there, you wouldn't understand how important a change it was. In the 1950s, this was dear old shut your mouth land. You towed the line. I mean, example, the big clothing thing when I was in junior high school were pants called peggers. They came to a narrow cuff, and you had to get your shoes off and wiggle to get them out, and you wore them below on skinny little belts. The schools were hysterical. Communism! And so they had guards at the doors, and you had to pull your pants down over your shoes if you were a boy. If you couldn't, you were sent home and kicked out of school until your parents apologized for you and you had proper pants. That's how narrow this world was. In those days, everything was repressive. But it was almost all about little issues. How people saw you, clothes make the man, and how people talked about you. Really monumental issues you could bring out and talk about. Now it's much the other way around. You just can't bring up and talk about anything because that kind of hush-hush neighborhood talking has extended now to political correctness, to language, to politics, to everything. And we can't do that because that's not nice, you know. And then what are we doing? We want it so desperately behind the scenes. Look at these political campaigns, the nasty smear campaigns, the Obama girls, you know. We're doing it. It's just that we hire thugs to do it for us. And it's kind of interesting. And all that really rolls up is I think that we have abdicated personal responsibility and personal involvement in our lives and our communities. And until we take that back, we will never have the society that we say we have and we dream of having. It just won't happen. You know? And I knew about this little bookstore called The Bookworm on 43rd. And it had been run for years by a whole chain of managers for the owner who had a real estate shop next door. And he had that bookstore because he loved books and wanted it next door. So in the evenings, he could wander in and say, it's my store, and pick a book off the shelves and take it home. It's a big thrill. He told me some wonderful stories about selling books like James Joyce in the 1930s. Was that difficult? A lady named Beatrice Cutts, who was hugely significant in the university district and everything that happened there. Not just books, but the whole social scene, and nobody knows that either. Had been managing it, decided she didn't want to do this. She started buying the good books for herself out of her pocket and the bad books for the owner. And then one day she moved around the corner, opened a thing called Puss in Books, and changed book selling in the district forever. So another family friend had taken it over, and I noticed that the store had kind of gotten rotten, but all of a sudden it looked kind of nicer. And so I stopped in and I said hello to Sally DeLay, who was the girl running it. She had been the clerk assistant manager. Well, it turned out the manager hadn't showed up for a week or two, so she just kept showing up and opening it. The owner came in and said, where's the manager? And she said, I haven't seen him for weeks. Well, I guess you're it then. And that's how Sally DeLay took over that store. She was making $5, $6 a day. I mean, you can't make coffee for that. But what she had done is she'd gone through the shelves and picked all the nice looking books she could find, put them in the window, cleaned it up, dusted. It looked like you'd want to go in and look. There's only 10 books in the window instead of 400. So I complimented her on that, and her first response was, do you know about books? I don't. Please help me. I had lots of free time. I'm a graduate student. You know, you go to class 3 hours a week, and you don't go get drafted for Vietnam. So I started dropping by and helping her, and within about 2 weeks, I had the sales up to $35 a day from 5 or 6. and then up to 100. And I had seen what was going on in San Francisco, and Sally really liked rock music and heard of the posters, so I arranged to have posters shipped up here, and we got them all over the walls, and we got all kinds of head shop stuff because no one was doing that, and it became a phenomenon. The people that had started the Id bookstore, I'd been down there a lot, they knew me, because all the political groups met there. And I remembered it well because the dog of one of them had chewed my only winter coat to pieces under the table when we were busy talking about socialist agenda. They came one evening and said, could we have coffee with you and make an offer? And I said, So Sally and I went and talked to them. They said, we had seen what you've done with this bookstore. It is the best revival we've ever seen of a bookstore. Would you like another bookstore? And I said, wow, what's the deal? And they said, well, we started, I said, I know about the Id. Okay, they said, we can't run it anymore. Our spouses, our kids, our jobs are getting in the way, and we don't want to see it die. I said, if you will take it and promise you will keep it open as long as you possibly can and not just break it down, we'll give it to you. That's pretty hard to turn down. Again, I had a lot of free time, and I was looking for another job. My campus job had gone away. And so we agreed that we would do this if they would let us pay them back what they had put into it. One of them had made the bookshelves himself, but he bought the materials, they bought the books, so we worked out a number, about $1,500, which is a lot of money then. And we agreed to pay them back 10% of the proceeds. First thing I did was, since that was not the place to be at that time, I was looking for a location, and I found one on 41st, which was commercially terrible, but it was us. Moved it out there one rainy weekend, and that's when I met most of the most exciting people I ever met in the Ave. We were struggling to get stuff in there, and it was cold and nasty and everything, and 2 or 3 of them walked by, like Doc Eskenazi, and said, oh, that looks terrible. Can I help you? That's the kind of thing that we got from people then. And they spent the rest of the night helping us move. We went out to the Tai-Tung at 3 in the morning for a quick dinner, and they stayed to help and make this thing work. Sales jumped again. We were by the university, became well known, became almost infamous.